Ever feel a little lost in the DOT drug and alcohol testing maze? Like, where do you even begin?
It's definitely a lot to take in, especially with so much at stake.
Right. And we're talking some serious stakes here. Today, we're going deep on DOT drug and alcohol testing, arming you with the need-to-know info to stay compliant and avoid those, well, hefty fines.
We're talking up to $10,000. No one wants to be hit with that.
Absolutely not. So, to make sure we're all on the same page, we're diving into some materials from U.S. drug test centers. They're a pretty big name in the industry.
They really are. They provide a ton of resources and services to help companies navigate this whole DOT testing landscape.
And it's not just about trucking companies, right?
No, it's way broader than you might think. We're talking bus companies, for hire carriers, private fleets. Even if you're an independent owner or operator, you're part of the system.
So, why all the fuss? Why is the DOT so strict about this across the board?
Well, it boils down to safety, plain and simple. Think about it. These jobs often involve operating heavy machinery, transporting valuable goods, and navigating sometimes hazardous conditions.
Makes sense. You need everyone to be on their A game. No room for error.
Exactly. And that's where these regulations come in. The DOT's goal is to ensure everyone's fit for duty every single time. It's all about preventing accidents and ultimately saving lives.
Now, that's a mission we can all get behind.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say you're an owner-operator just starting out. The materials mention something called a random testing consortium. What's that all about?
Right, consortia. Those are crucial, especially for owner-operators who might think they can handle testing on their own.
I can see how that will be tempting. Keep everything in-house.
But you can't. And that's where a consortium comes in. It's essentially a third-party administrator that manages all aspects of your random drug and alcohol testing program.
So they handle the random selections, the testing logistics, the paperwork,
Yeah.
all of it.
All of it takes a huge load off your plate and ensures everything's done by the book. And that's where companies like U.S. drug test centers come in. They act as a one-stop shop for this kind of stuff.
So they can help you find a consortium, manage your membership, and even handle pre-employment testing.
Exactly. They streamline the whole process, which is a lifesaver, especially when you're starting out and have a million other things on your mind.
Speaking of streamlining, even with a consortium on your side, compliance is an ongoing thing, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's not a one-and-done deal.
What are the absolute must-haves to make sure you're always in the DOT's good graces?
Okay, so think of compliance like the foundation of your safety net. And any solid foundation needs a few key elements. First up, you need a rock-solid written policy. This outlines all the rules, testing procedures, consequences for violations, no matter who you are in the company.
This is like everyone knows the rules of the game, right?
Exactly. And make sure it's accessible to everyone. No one can say, oh, I didn't know.
Right. No excuses. So you've got your policy, it's clear, it's comprehensive. What's next?
Training. You gotta train your employees. And I don't just mean handing them a pamphlet and calling it a day. They need to truly understand the why behind the policy, their responsibilities, and what to expect during a test.
Knowledge is power, as they say.
Absolutely. And this includes supervisors too, by the way. They need specific training on things like recognizing signs of potential substance use and how to conduct reasonable suspicion testing.
That's a whole other can of worms, right?
Yeah.
Knowing when you can legally ask someone to take a test.
Exactly. And finally, you got to be meticulous about record keeping. Everything from test results to training certificates needs to be securely stored and easily accessible. You never know when a DOT auditor might come knocking.
It's like having all your ducks in a row, just in case.
Exactly. Because when those auditors show up, they're going to want to see everything: your policies, training records, random testing process, test result documentation, you name it. They're making sure you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's.
So what does a DOT audit actually look like? What can companies, especially new owner-operators, expect during that process?
Well, like I said, it's a comprehensive examination of your entire drug and alcohol testing program. Think of it as a deep dive into your compliance efforts. And speaking of deep dives, new owner-operators, within their first year, they'll undergo what's called a new entrant examination.
New entrant exam sounds intense. What are the make-or-break elements of that?
Two things are non-negotiable for owner-operators. First, before you even think about hitting the road, you need a negative pre-employment drug test. No ifs, ands, or buts. And second, remember those consortia we talked about? Enrolling in one is mandatory for owner-operators. You can't manage the random testing process yourself. The DOT requires that third-party objectivity.
So you can't just say, trust me, I'm not doing drugs.
Nope, not going to fly with the DOT. They want that independent verification.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've covered trucking companies and owner-operators, but what about other DOT agencies? Do the rules change depending on the industry, like aviation or maritime?
The DOT isn't a one-size-fits-all kind of deal.
Right.
While those core principles of safety and compliance, they're always going to be there, but different DOT agencies, they have their own specific regulations. Testing rates, too, based on the risks of their particular industry.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
A cargo plane's a little different from a freight truck when it comes to risk factors.
Exactly. So, for instance, you've got the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA.
Right.
They mandate a 25% annual testing rate for drugs and 10% for alcohol.
Okay, so that means.
So each year, a quarter of their safety-sensitive employees are randomly selected for drug testing and 10% for alcohol.
Yeah.
The stakes are obviously sky high in aviation.
Yeah.
Those frequent tests, they're really designed to minimize any chance of risk.
Absolutely. What about, say, maritime transportation? That falls under the Coast Guard, right?
Right. The United States Coast Guard, the USCG, they're also all about safety. 25% annual drug testing rate for them, too. But here's an interesting thing. They don't actually require random alcohol testing.
Oh, interesting. So each industry really does have its own specific considerations.
Absolutely.
And the DOT regulations, they reflect that.
They do. They do.
It seems like it'd be a full-time job just keeping up with all the different agency requirements.
I know, right? It can be a lot, especially for companies that work across different states or sectors. That's why it's so crucial to find those experienced professionals who can help you navigate all that.
Yeah, you don't want to be playing guessing games with this stuff.
No, not at all. Now, we've been talking a lot about these DOT-regulated industries, but what about those companies that aren't under their jurisdiction? Do they have any options if they want to implement drug and alcohol testing programs?
That's a good question. It seems like no matter what, maintaining a safe and productive work environment, that's got to be a priority.
Absolutely. And you're right, a lot of companies, even if they're not bound by those DOT regulations, they still choose to put those programs in place.
So they're seeing the value even without the mandate.
Exactly. For some, it's their insurance providers that require it. For others, it's about building a safer workplace, maybe attracting and keeping those top-notch employees. It's all about being proactive.
Taking those extra steps.
Exactly. To protect their employees, their business, just makes sense.
Now, going back to those U.S. drug test centers materials.
Yeah.
They really emphasize the convenience and accessibility of their services, like their network of collection sites, the online testing options.
Right. And that's key. Compliance doesn't have to be this logistical nightmare.
Right.
With the right partner, like them, you can really streamline that whole process, make it easier on everyone.
Absolutely. Now, they also mentioned having a designated point person for all things drug and alcohol testing, the DER, right?
Yes, the designated employer representative, that's right.
So what does this DER actually do? What's their role?
Think of the DER as your company's drug and alcohol program manager.
Okay.
They're the ones making sure you're following all those DOT regulations, handling the day-to-day stuff, staying updated on any changes. They're calling the plays, making sure everyone on the team knows the rules and follows them.
Big responsibility.
It is.
So you'd want someone who's really on top of things for that role.
Oh, absolutely. They need to be organized, knowledgeable, a good communicator, and able to handle the pressure. It's a tough job, but vital for any company that's got to deal with those DOT drug and alcohol testing regulations.
So we've talked about who needs to be compliant, who's managing it all.
Right.
Now, let's get into the nitty-gritty. What are the different types of drug and alcohol testing situations that might come up in the workplace?
All right, sounds good.
Let's start with the most common one, pre-employment testing.
Right, so pre-employment testing, it's mandatory. Anyone applying for a safety-sensitive position in a DOT-regulated industry, they got to go through it.
Before they even, step foot in a big rig?
Exactly. Or on a barge, you name it. It's all about establishing that baseline for safety right from day one.
Setting the tone.
Yes. And it's not just about weeding out people who might be using substances. It's about those clear expectations.
Right.
Showing how important a drug-free workplace is right off the bat.
Sure. So pre-employment testing, check. What else?
And you've got random drug and alcohol testing.
Which is exactly what it sounds like, right?
Pretty much. A percentage of employees, they're just randomly selected for testing. Could be anytime throughout the year.
Keeps everyone on their toes.
Exactly. That unpredictability, it's really effective. Deters anyone who might be thinking about trying to cheat the system. And then, of course, there are times when testing needs to happen for a specific reason.
Okay, so not random, not pre-employment. What kind of situations are we talking about?
So let's say a truck driver, he's involved in an accident. Post-accident testing, that's required. They got to figure out if drugs or alcohol played a role. Or, imagine a supervisor, she sees an employee who's clearly not fit for duty, looks like they might be under the influence.
Right, that's a safety concern right there.
Exactly. That's when you do a reasonable suspicion test.
But that seems like it requires a really clear protocol.
Oh, absolutely. You have to have a very clear, objective process for that. Can't be based on gut feelings or anything like that. There have to be specific signs, observable symptoms, and you got to document everything.
Right, protect everyone involved.
Exactly. And finally, there's return to duty and follow-up testing.
So if an employee, let's say they do violate the drug and alcohol policy, it's not necessarily the end of their career.
Often it's not. Return to duty and follow-up testing, it's part of a process. It lets employees address substance use issues and potentially get back to work.
So it's not just about punishing them, it's about giving them a chance to get back on track.
Exactly. This often involves counseling, treatment, ongoing monitoring, helps them stay on that substance-free path.
Some more, I don't know, holistic approach.
Right.
Checks and balances, fairness, safety, all that.
Right.
And this is where employee education becomes really important.
It's
right?
huge. Yes. The materials, they really emphasize that.
Yeah.
Companies need to be clear about their policies, make sure employees have access to resources, all that.
It's about empowering them, not just throwing the rule book at them.
Yes. Education is key. When your employees understand the why, the procedures, their rights, they're much more likely to be on board and follow the rules. It's about building a culture of awareness, shared responsibility for everyone's safety.
Absolutely. So we've spent a good amount of time talking about the how of DOT drug and alcohol testing.
We have.
We've gone through the regulations, the different types of tests, those consortia, all the nuts and bolts. But as we wrap up this deep dive, I think it's important to zoom out a bit. Look at the bigger picture, the ethical side of these programs. It's a great point. We're not just talking about numbers and regulations here. We're talking about people's lives. How do we make sure these programs, with all their importance, how do we make sure they respect the individual?
It's a balancing act for sure. Safety is paramount, absolutely. But we also have to protect individual rights. These programs, they delve into some pretty personal stuff.
It's not just a right or wrong answer on a test.
Exactly. We could be talking about someone's struggles with addiction, their personal challenges. That's why transparency is so important.
So being upfront with employees about what to expect.
Exactly. Employees, they need to know the testing procedures, their rights if they refuse a test, what happens if they get a positive result. No surprises, no gotchas, just clear, honest information.
Level the playing field.
Yes, exactly. And the testing process itself, it should be respectful, minimally invasive. And then, of course, there's confidentiality. That's huge.
What happens in the testing room stays in the testing room.
Well, not quite. But seriously, those test results, they need to be handled carefully. Shared only with those who absolutely need to know, like the DER or maybe a substance abuse professional if it comes to that.
Protecting someone's privacy, especially in a potentially sensitive situation.
Exactly. And this all ties into another critical point, support. Let's say an employee does test positive. Are there resources available to help them?
So it's not just about disciplinary action.
Right. This should be about providing a pathway forward. This might mean connecting them with employee assistance programs, treatment centers, support groups. Addiction, it's a complex issue, and just heading someone with a punishment, it rarely solves the problem.
It's about treating people with dignity, even when they make mistakes.
Absolutely. And recognizing that they may need help, not just reprimands. It's about creating a workplace where everyone feels supported, even when things get tough.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into DOT drug and alcohol testing, I think the big takeaway is that it's about more than just checking boxes.
Right.
It's about creating a culture of safety, responsibility, and yes, even compassion. We've covered the regulations, the different types of tests, the importance of consortia and the DER, and so much more.
It's a lot to digest.
It really is. But if you're involved in the DOT-regulated industry, even thinking about it, this information is crucial. And here's something to think about as you move forward. How can you make sure your drug and alcohol testing program is fair, effective, and truly supportive of your employees? It's a question worth asking. It's about building a workplace where everyone feels safe, respected, and valued. That's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.